We are now less than 2 weeks away from the Bulls' first preseason game. Of course, training camp starts next week, kicking it off with Media Day on Monday. And as we near closer and closer to the start of the regular season, I think it's important to talk about the things we need to see from this Bulls team that we didn't see last season. And I'm talking more specifically about the things on the court. Not necessarily for the team as a whole, not just at the individual level, and not as it just relates to their record and making the playoffs, which they will make the playoffs, more so what their recent acquisitions can bring to mitigate some of the issues they ran into last season. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. If you've been following my channel for a while now, you were around when I was covering the Bulls this past season, and game by game, there was always a common theme that we as Bulls fans struggled to see from our team. Namely, turnovers, defense, blown fourth quarter leads, and obviously just their general lack of energy and hustle on a nightly basis. These were the things I complained a lot about last season in my videos. So first thing is first, let's start with the turnovers. For a good portion of the season, the Bulls were dead last in the league in terms of turnovers committed, and towards the end of the season, they finally started to pick it up a bit in terms of taking care of the ball better, especially after the trade deadline, but only good enough to finish 27th in the league in turnovers, averaging 15.1 turnovers a game. And according to a stat that was called out by our very own insider Rob Schaefer, their opponent scored 17.8 points per game off of those turnovers, which was the fourth worst in the league. So again, despite the talent of the Bulls and the pace at which they played last year, at least at the beginning of the season, they struggled with their ball handling and passing to where it was far too frequent in handing the ball over to the other team, especially in the fourth quarter, which resulted in so many of those fourth quarter blown leads on games where the Bulls should have won, which of course could have been the difference in making the playoffs. Now, the biggest culprits in terms of the Bulls turnovers, well, shouldn't come as much of a surprise given they handled the ball most of the time, and that was Zach Lavine and Coby White. So what do we need to see from the Bulls in this upcoming season as it relates to their turnovers? Well, first, Lavine has to take better care of the ball. As good as he was last season, averaging 3.5 turnovers a game is unacceptable for a player of his caliber. But more importantly, the Bulls as a whole must improve the way that they run their offense in running the floor in transition as well as in the half court, and their general playmaking across the board. Making the right passes, having better control of the ball when swinging it to the other side of the court. The good thing is the front office directly addressed this issue by bringing one of the best passers with impeccable court vision in transition in Lonzo Ball, and an incredibly underrated playmaker in the half court in DeMar DeRozan. I always have to remind people that DeRozan went from being a non-passer earlier in his career to averaging near 7 assists per game last season as a point forward, which was 14th in the entire league. But more importantly, DeRozan was one of the best ball protectors in the game, only averaging 2 turnovers a game for one of the best turnover to assist ratios in the league. Of course, that doesn't even include the fact that he can also get you 20 plus points per game. So by bringing in Lonzo and DeMar, the Bulls now have 2 very capable playmakers who protect the ball well, can set up plays for their teammates without being too risky in giving up the ball. And that obviously doesn't lead to as many easy transition points from the opponent. Now, the other thing that wasn't as talked about last season as an issue for the Bulls was their ability to get to the foul line. Now, you can call it poor officiating and not giving the Bulls their calls, particularly Zach Lavine. I can't tell you how many times I would see Zach get hammered in the lane and the refs choke on the whistle, but the fact of the matter is the Bulls were last in the league in free throw attempts per game last season. And this greatly impacts a team's offense when you're struggling to generate any kind of scoring in the fourth quarter when you're going on scoring droughts. Can't have that next season. We can't have the Bulls finish last in the league in free throw attempts. I don't care how bad the officiating is. Part of that is also a team's aggressiveness. And again, the good thing about the moves that the Bulls made this offseason is also to address this issue in the Bulls' inability to get to the foul line. DeRozan specifically is great at drawing contact in the paint and getting to the line. He averaged 7.2 free throw attempts per game last year, which was 8th in the league and also a career high for him. Lonzo Ball, same thing, not as efficient in getting to the line as DeRozan is, but is also able to create contact, not only for himself, but also for his teammates that will lead to more attempts at the line. I think it's also encouraging to note that, Lonzo has improved his free throw shooting percentage from a putrid 41% in his sophomore season when he was with the Lakers to now 78% that he did last year on the Pelicans. The other issue defense. Now, I've talked about defense before on multiple occasions. Now, although the Bulls defense didn't look that bad by the numbers last year as they finished 12th in the league in defensive rating, but they also gave up quite a number of points to their opponents, more specifically in the fourth quarter, again, which led to all of those fourth quarter meltdowns. Now, the media will tell you this team's defense is going to be terrible because their core three in Lavine, DeRozan, and Vucevic are bad defenders. But what they fail to recognize is the strong defensive prowess of Lonzo Ball being a very underrated perimeter defender. The fact that Patrick Williams and his defensive mindset that led to Billy Donovan assigning him to guard the opposing team's best player on most nights. The fact that they brought in one of the more underrated defenders in the league in Alex Caruso, who finished first in the entire league in point of attack defenders rating, first in the league. Caruso was also the only player, one of the only players coming off the bench to receive all defensive team votes. You also add Tony Bradley, Stanley Johnson, Troy Brown Jr., Derek Jones Jr., all very capable defenders, all massive wingspans. The Bulls are going to be an under-the-radar strong defensive team. And I've talked about all the reasons why in a prior video. And we have to see the Bulls defense improve next season, especially in the fourth quarter. We know they're going to be a great offensive team. I don't think anybody is going to question that with the strong scores that they have. And at the end of the day, the league is focusing more on offense than it ever has before, so that is of the utmost importance. But when it comes to playoff time, defense does matter. They don't have to be the best defensive team in the league, but it has to at least marginally improve from what we saw last year. And then finally, the thing I have been harping on about the Bulls the most, the thing that means the most to me, and I think it's because I got spoiled in the heyday of the early D-Rose years, which was one of the most energetic teams we have ever seen, but that's the Bulls' energy, grit, hustle, and tough-nosed mindset that we must see in this upcoming season for every game. It was there on some nights, don't get me wrong, but we need to see the Bulls play with a level of intensity that is unmatched every single night. Now, I think the additions of DeRozan and Lonzo maybe aren't necessarily the most energetic players. Patrick Williams obviously is a pretty stoic player as well, and same with Vucevic, but the sheer excitement of now being a talented, relevant, and fun team should hopefully get their energy up on both ends of the floor. I think a guy like Caruso can get you to encourage other players to play with the same level of hustle that he brings every game. I think some of these guys who have massive chips on their shoulders, who have a lot to prove, and Alice Johnson, Stanley Johnson, Tony Bradley, even Coby White, will bring that energy to showcase what they can do, and that infectious energy will hopefully be contagious for the rest of the team and trickle down across the roster. I've said it so many times, but I'm actually okay with the Bulls losing games. Within reason, of course, they can't lose all the time, but losing games as long as they give it their all, playing hard for the full 48 minutes, not taking quarters off, not taking games off, and every player being responsible and holding the team accountable to ensure that intensity is being brought for every game. I think if the Bulls can address all of these issues that we saw last season, as it relates to limiting their turnovers, getting to the line more frequently with aggressiveness, playing better defense, and being a fun, energetic, and hustle team, the Bulls can be incredibly successful in not only the regular season, but the playoffs as well, which will hopefully translate to the franchise becoming a free agency destination, Zach Lavine re-signing with the team, and bringing this team to contention for the first time in over a decade. I want to know what you guys think, though. What do you think we need to see from this Bulls team that we didn't see last season to ensure they are successful for not only just next season, but going forward into future years as well? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.